Very frustrating to those who are watching too. When you testify in front of this committee, it's better not to talk about the past than to lie about the past. Somebody's not telling the truth today. Now, I'm disappointed that the other witnesses are not here. And I understand from the chairman that we plan to release those depositions. And I hope the public understands that what we're having today is a very short form. I went through most of these depositions last night, hundreds of pages. And when this is released, you're going to get somewhat of a more comprehensive view. What's interesting today is to see the interaction, but I would argue that those depositions are fairly devastating. Mr. McNamee, there was something that caught my attention that I would like to raise. It was a side comment fairly far into your testimony. You were discussing related issues, and you alleged that David Cohn, a player rep for, I believe then, the Toronto Blue Jays, said, quote, the owners want the union. The owners went to the union and said, we don't want to test, but you've got to give us some valid excuse to go to the media. Do you have any more knowledge of that, and is that accurate characterization of what you said? Because that is an incredible allegation here, because the union has been being blamed for not testing, and that there hasn't been an investigation of the owners thus far. And what you're saying is a player rep went to who and said that? Did you hear the second hand, third hand?
The player rep came to me, and that's what was told to me.
And why
those statements.
And why did he come to you?
Because of my background, and he wanted to know. He was talking to me on the back of the plane about the current state, which reverts back to I believe it was 2000, and I think it was just a conversation, and he thought maybe I had some knowledge that might have led to believe that steroid use didn't enhance hand-eye coordination, which is what baseball is mainly depicted as far as ability.
Mr. Chairman, I know you don't want to have another hearing. I'm not advocating another hearing, but the Mitchell report was not targeted towards the ownership. And it's one thing we haven't investigated. This is a second to third hand type of revelation, but I think that the staff needs to look at this, because this comes to the core question of the legislation that you, I, Congressman Cummings, Congressman Davis, and Senator McCain introduced about whether we can trust baseball to, in fact, do testing on themselves. And if it's true that the owners wanted to, in effect, cover up and not have testing, this is a very serious allegation.
Well, I thank the gentleman for his comments.
Also, Mr. McNamee, when he held the press conference and played the tape live to the national media, that appears to have really ticked you off.
Yes, sir.
You made a reference in your deposition that that's when you produced the physical evidence.
Yes.
Do you believe that physical evidence, friend Mr. Micah was questioning, yes, there'll be blood. Mr. Clemens said that the blood could be from a number of other things. Do you believe that physical evidence will tie it directly to an illegal drug?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe it can be debated whether or not, in other words, will it be on the needle or something that clearly takes the DNA to that? Have you ever handled physical evidence when you were a policeman?
Physical evidence?
Yes, like this. How to track it, how to protect it, what it's likely to show. So are you speculating at this point, or do you know in fact that the DNA will be traced to HGH or steroids?
I'm speculating.
Okay. Because the DNA, if it's clear, will not disremember. In other words, it will help settle a debate. But if there's a dispute whether it was B12 or that even could be confusing. But I think it's important for the record, because I chaired the Narcotics Committee for a long time, and I can't tell you how much these depositions look like any kind of narcotics debate we have. It looks like cocaine. It looks like methamphetamine. And when you talked in your testimony about lying in the early stages, we often see witnesses who are caught, who go to the federal government and initially give up just enough so they think they're not going to go to jail, but they don't really turn over their major clients. And then something ticks them off, and they go a step further. And that could be another explanation. But it may be, if it doesn't show the tracking, that it's going to be very difficult to resolve. But the other reason, Mr. Chairman, I think it's very important that you've committed to release the depositions is that, in fact, Mr. McNamee has been verified by Mr. Knobloch is accurate. He's been verified by Mr. Pettit is accurate. Radomski, who was under federal investigation, supports a lot of that, although we don't have a deposition on him. And one last thing, it would have been great to have Mr. Knobloch here today because it was a sad testimony that he had about his life experiences and about how he wanted to come clean for his family. I urge people to read that. And if I could make one last thing, I am incredibly disappointed with the players and the pressure that they put on. It comes through all these depositions about not to talk. If families in America don't talk about the drug abuse in their neighborhoods, and the locker room would be your neighborhoods, if you don't talk about that drug abuse, there was a family in Baltimore that Congressman Cummings and I did a bill on, the Dawson family, that their house was firebombed, that all of them were killed, all their children, because they talked. And yet baseball players somehow, and management and trainers, think they're above it, that there's some kind of a snitch, that there's some kind of a thing wrong if you talk about other players. The fact is, we can't get control of drug abuse unless you turn over other people and cooperate. And this wall of silence coming out of baseball has been disgusting. And it took the federal government, the Valco case, to get anything out of this. Then it took the hearings to get the Mitchell report. And now we've got all kinds of questions coming off that, whether management was in fact involved. When people say that there should not be an independent test, I don't see how, given this track record, they think there can be anything but independent testing. Thank you for your patience.